Ugly, useless, annoying, and a waste of time. Oi, I didn't mean me. Instead, we're going to be running through 10 of the worst mounts in World of Warcraft. As alluded to, this list will run through mounts that might take you months to get for a really bad reward, or it's just a generally ugly mount, or kind of pointless. So we're going to be running through the 10 that I feel are the worst mounts to obtain in the game. Warlords of Draenor being an overall disappointing expansion for most, at least it did bring a lot of mounts. Unfortunately, as another disappointing point, they were all pretty much boars. The expansion brought over 11 different boar mounts, armoured or unarmoured, and one of those is the Great Grey Tusk. This drops from a rare spawn, the others came from like achievements, reps, etc. But this one you had to hunt down a rare spawn, and then when you eventually got that rare, all you got was another boar that had no armour on. And the annoying thing about the boars as well is they run so badly. They kind of look like they're trying to run, but they're kind of angrily power walking, and then their mount special is them randomly humping the ground. Overall, the boar just deserves the bottom of this list, especially the Great Grey Tusk. Moving on to number 9 now, and we have the Vashia Seahorse, and this is on this list for a few reasons. The first being it's a water-only mount, so you can only use it within the water, and that's not necessarily bad. Like, having one of those in your collection is useful. The problem with this one in particular, though, it can only be used in the zone Vashia, and Vashia is one of the least popular leveling zones in the game. People just don't like being there, so you don't really ever get to use this mount. On top of that, it's just a reskin of 2 other mounts that can be used anywhere in the world. One of those being the Reins of Poseidus, which you can pick up for about 10 to 20k, or you just go and grind the rare until you've got it. And that's pretty much the same mount, except that doesn't have the zone-specific restriction. So this mount is just kind of useless. It's not very nice to look at, so it deserves the 9th spot on this list. You've probably had someone doing that in your party or your group, or just near you when you're AFKing in a city, where they'll be jumping up and down or moving left and right on the mechanical mount, making a ton of noise for absolutely no reason, and it's just super obnoxious. So most of the mechanical mounts kind of fit into this spot, but the one we're going to highlight is the flying machine because it's the easier one to pick up. It's very cheap, a few hundred gold, not very nice to look at because there's a better looking version of this. So it's just super obnoxious, but I don't know why people do this. It's so annoying that people have made add-ons to get rid of mount sounds like this just because they just can't stand it. And honestly, there's mounts that make more noise like this, like Mimron's Head. That's one of the more noisier culprits. But at least Mimron's Head has a bit more going for it visually, so it gets a little bit of a pass, but it's still kind of in this category too. But we're going to pick on the flying machine in particular for this spot. At spot number 7, we have another ugly mount that's also kind of a waste of time, and that is the Experiment 12B. This is a rare drop from Ultraxion in Dragon Soul, and overall it just doesn't look very good. Especially what makes it worse is in that same raid you have mounts like the Lifebinder's Handmaiden, which is an amazing looking drake. It's got this new upgraded model, looks really good. And then it also drops from the boss Ultraxion, which is this really cool looking Twilight Drake with the combined horns. Looks amazing. You're killing this boss week in, week out. To finally get the mount drop, you mount up on it, and it's just this really badly recolored basic Drake. Nothing new done with it, nothing going on. It's just kind of ugly. So for those reasons, it is taking the spot number 7. At number 6, we have a mount where if you buy it, you've pretty much been scammed, and that is going to be the Palehide Diahorn. This was introduced in BFA, and it has a cost of 500k. And this isn't even attached to a reputation either, so getting exalted with factions does absolutely nothing for this mount because it's not tied to any faction in particular. So it is going to always cost 500k. The worst part about this mount is there's nothing unique about it. It's not a different Diahorn in any way, shape or form. It's basically just the Diahorns that we've had since Mr. Pandaria with a different skin on it, and they're trying to sell it for 500k. So for that reason, I just don't see the purpose of ever buying this mount unless you really want to bolster your mount collection. And even then, there's still a crap ton of other mounts you could buy before this. This is going to be like at the very end of the road for you in terms of buying mounts. So it's definitely taking that spot number 6. Most of you seeing the current mount on the screen will think, why does he have the Swift White Hawkstrider on the screen right now? That doesn't really deserve to be on the list. And you'd be partly right, but this isn't actually the Swift White Hawkstrider. This is the Ivory Hawkstrider. Not much difference. The only real difference is the armor. It doesn't have like the armor plate on its chest and things like that, but very similar. But way more difficult to get than the Swift White Hawkstrider. Okay, the Swift White Hawkstrider is an RNG drop, but it is one of the higher dungeon drop mounts in the game. It's on like a 3 to 4%er, while most of them are on like a 1 to 2. So it's not too crazy to get this mount. It's owned by quite a high percentage of the player base in comparison to some of the other dungeon mounts. In terms of getting the Ivory Hawkstrider, on the other hand though, you need to first get your hands on one of the Falcasaur mounts obtained in Legion. So you go get the pet, you'll raise the pet to level 25, then once you've got your mount, you'll mount up and talk to an NPC in High Mountain, and that will unlock a secret reputation. With that secret reputation, you then do PvP in Legion, and you'll be able to buy these items that will allow you to collect coins from players. You'll turn those coins in for reputation, and then once you're done with this pretty long grind, you'll be able to purchase the Ivory Hawkstrider at Exalted for like 10k gold. So for how much work you have to put into this secret mount, it's not very good. So it's definitely kind of ugly and a pretty big waste of time in my opinion. Speaking of things that are a waste of time, if you wouldn't mind wasting a little bit of your time and also hitting the subscribe button down below if you are enjoying the video so far. And with that, let's move on to the rest of the list. At spot number 4, we have the Frenzyfell Talon, and while this isn't necessarily like an ugly mount, it just feels like quite a poor reward for how much time investment this takes to get. If you're not familiar where this comes from obtaining 400 mounts usable by one character. So it's basically your reward for being the master of mount collecting. You've obtained all these different mounts, and your reward is a third reskin of a mount that's been obtainable for years prior. So I just don't think that's a very good reward, especially when this is one of the worst color variants in my opinion. Void Talon being the better one, and Ellis Resort being pretty good too. So I just don't think it's that great, especially when the 300 mounts and the 350 mount achievement mounts are pretty damn good. Like the Heavenly as a Cloud Serpent, one of my favorite mounts in the game. And then the Frostbitten or Frostbite Infernal, whatever it's called, also looks pretty good. It's a nice variant from the other Infernals obtainable in the game, and that those all come from one place as well. So I just think it's not that great. So in my opinion, this one's a bit more of a waste of time considering the effort you need to go in to get 400 mounts. Do you have 5 million gold? Probably not, right? And if you had 5 million gold, you most likely wouldn't buy this mount. This is the Savage Raptor, and this mount generally goes for about 5 million gold nowadays on auction houses. The reason for that is it's a TCG mount that is no longer obtainable from TCG because TCG was discontinued. So all you've got left is the ones that are kind of available from players that have kept hold of them. And this mount sucks. This is a mount that is already obtainable in the game as well as the Red Primal Raptor. The only difference between these two mounts is the saddle color. That's it. A slight difference in the saddle color. One's a lighter saddle, one's a darker saddle. So you can obtain the mount that looks exactly like this mount that people are trying to sell for 5 million gold on average. It's just an ugly mount, a complete waste of time. And even if you bought it back in the day from TCG, you were kind of slapped in the face when they included this into Pandaria. So for that reason, Savage Raptor is definitely going to be spot number 3. The Supreme King of Waste of Time takes spot number 2, and that is going to be the prestigious Bloodforge Core. This mount requires you to get to honor level 500, which is an insane amount of time to get to. It takes roughly 4.4 million honor to reach honor level 500. The mount is obtained by a 0.something% of the player base, a really tiny amount. And even those players got that honor through, well, most of them got it through honor exploits and stuff in the past. There's very few people that have this mount legit. And for all their hard work, what do they get? A horned horse with some armor on it. I mean, it doesn't look bad, especially if this was the only horned horse that looked similar to this in the game. It would definitely stand out. But there's a bunch of mounts that look very similar that still do the job. For example, the honor level 250 mount, which is half the honor levels, is the prestigious Midnight Courser, and I think this looks great. Honestly, in most situations, I think I'd prefer this mount over the honor level 500 one in general. It just doesn't seem worth the time. Imagine getting one honor level per day on average. It would take you 500 days to get this mount, and at the end of it, you get the Bloodforge Core. So that's your reward for all that hard work. It's a mount that doesn't really stand itself apart from the rest of the mounts in the game. It's not something people are going to be like, whoa, look how insane that mount looks. The only thing that's going to make people whisper is like, wow, you really grinded 500 honor levels for that? It just seems like a complete waste of time for this mount.
This is the beginning and the end, mortals.
Yeah, this mount was certainly the beginning of the end, as this was the first mount added to the cash shop, and that is the Celestial Steed. And back then there was no WoW tokens, there was no using gold to get WoW tokens to buy the mount. Your only option was to spend proper money. And the mount had a few different names throughout the years, the more PG name being Sparkle Pony, but there'll also be a link to a video in the description below, which was made by Total Biscuit back in the day. It was like a parody video of the mount, and it's still pretty funny to today's standards, so I definitely recommend checking that out. But outside of that, yeah, it just didn't sit very well with the player base. People weren't very happy with, a mount added to the store. The fact that it was invincible but a sparkly version, people didn't really like that either. And then even today, I think it's kind of lost some of its sparkle. It looks a lot more kind of transparent and stuff. And I just don't think it looks like a very good mount, especially for having to spend real money on it. Just don't think it's worth it. And obviously, got a bit more of a bitter taste in most people's mouths because this was the beginning of the cash store for mounts being sold, and then that has continued to this day. Obviously slightly better with being able to buy a WoW token, but still, there's still mounts that you have to buy with some kind of money. So that does bring us to the end of the video, and obviously this was a bit more of a fun, opinion-based video, so your list of 10 worst mounts in the game, probably a bit different to mine. I'd love to hear what you think your 10 worst would be in the comments down below. Outside of that though, I hope you did enjoy this because I've been doing a lot more kind of serious guides and stuff recently, so I thought I'd have a bit of fun with a video. If you did enjoy the video, look out for more videos coming very soon, especially Shadowlands stuff. We're going to be pumping that out. Outside of that, thanks for watching guys. See ya.